This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions, www.cosproductions.com. Please be sure to subscribe and welcome to our circle.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Patricia W. Fisher with Readers Entertainment Radio. And just so you know, it is Make a Dog's Day. So if you've got a pet or just like dogs, make their day today. Maybe a little bit more than normal. So one of the things my dog absolutely loves is sweet potatoes, and they're super good for them. It's one of the foods that's often in the many brands of dog food out there. So a little bit of sweet potato, you could do it raw. If you had some extra, baked it or whatever. So, and it's like candy to them. They absolutely love it. And then spend a little bit of extra time with them, hang out. But also, it's also Smart is Cool Day. And so being smart is cool, which, we've seen tons of shows where of course, the uber smart kid is the nerd and picked on, and we're all finding, and probably knew this already, that it's fine to be intelligent, and so just embrace your intelligence and learn even more. So it's super important to be happy with all that. So, and as I slowly ramble this morning, my apologies, but I also have an amazing guest this morning, which will definitely get me out of the rambling. For all of you today, I get to interview Scarlett Cole. She should be bold and do something amazing. Scarlett Cole insists on her website write-up. She's been a car maker, a consultant, even a senior executive at a large realtor during running strategy. Born in England, she spent time in the United States, Japan, and before ending up in Canada, where she met her own personal hero, all 6'1.5" of him. And one bold thing she did was become a writer. And her latest book, Love in the Numbers, is out now. You can find her on her website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and BookBub. All of the links are in the write-up of the show. Welcome, Scarlett. How are you?
I'm very good indeed, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm good. So I am so excited because you are a new writer to me. So I love finding new writers for me because I get to go back and it's almost like finding this treasure trove of new reads, because I was looking through all your stuff and you have the book that you just released, Love in the Numbers, is the first book of the fourth series you've written, correct?
Yes, that's right, and I totally agree with you. It's like hitting a gold mine when you hit a rich theme of an author that you read one book and you go and find that they've published so many more before you can just dive into them all.
I know. I'm so Kindle's gonna get hit hard this weekend because I'm I'm so excited. So tell me about your Love in the Numbers.
So Love in Numbers is the first book in the Love Distilled series, and it is set in a family-run gin distillery in Denver. The siblings, Emerson, Jake, and Olivia, have to step into big shoes when their father dies suddenly, and Emerson becomes the reluctant CEO, and Connor Finch is heir apparent to his father's liquor distribution business. He is looking forward to his father's retirement in 6 months, and he's going to be the CEO of the company. But his father has always believed that the Dyer's Gin Distillery belonged to him, and it was stolen away from him by Emerson's father. And Connor has grown up with this family legacy of hatred towards the Dyer family. And so when Emerson and Connor meet on an airplane for the first time, and it's the first time they've met, it's an epiphany for both of them.
Wow. It's very much of a, family rivalry, Romeo and Juliet type situation going back, obviously with a very different ending on this, but
they don't die,
and far more sexy. So we'll be very happy for that part. And they're both legal. Yay!
Absolutely.
So that's always good. But yeah, it's why Dallas? Because you live in the UK now, but why why Denver for your set?
Yeah, so I'm in a previous life, I was senior vice president of strategy for a retailer. And, one of the things that we always looked at is, where's your market? And my biggest market is the U.S. market. So when I was thinking about where I wanted to set my books, and when I first started writing, I was still living in Toronto. So I was like, I'm going to pick, cities in the U.S. And my first series, the Second Circle Tattoo series, is set in Miami. And it was set in Miami because Miami is one of my favorite places, and it was in Miami that I came up with the idea for the book. I was there on a girls' weekend with my friend Tina, and I just suddenly had this idea for the series. And before I got on the plane home, I had a rough idea of how all 4 books were going to go. So, sometimes when I pick places, it's where I've been, somewhere I want to go. The Love Over Duty series came after RWA. When we'd been to San Diego, but obviously that's where one of the big Navy SEAL bases are. And so with Denver, it is quite literally where Romance Writers America was.
Yeah.
So, I've been there, and I can have a feel for the place, and I can, the small details that I think, I strongly believe in bringing the location to life as a character. So, Denver and the gin distillery play a really big part in Love in Numbers. And, reading through the reviews the last couple of days, a lot of people have said, I can thoroughly imagine what this place looks like. I can imagine what it looks like in the distillery. I can imagine the part of Denver that it's in. And so that's always really important to me.
Yeah, the little details is certainly what pulls a reader in for sure. Because, as much as you've traveled, anybody can say, oh, it's like this, the place is like this. But once you go there, it's a much different layering of sensory to walk into it and see or smell or feel all those different things versus just reading out of a blog. Yeah. And the blogs are very well intended. I think it's a good preview for sure. So when you mentioned coming back from Miami on your girls' trip and you'd come up with this idea, were you on the plane like feverishly scribbling or writing or typing things on the computer, or was this all like you're plotting it in your head and then you were able to come home and write it all down? How did you do it?
Well, it was a bit of a process. We were sitting on our sun lounges, enjoying probably too early in the day, a glass of champagne. And I was reading this article about a tattoo artist who specialized in tattooing over scars. And this article stuck with me all day. And at this point, I'd not written a book. I hadn't written a book. I still had my executive job. I read a ton of romance. It was like my favorite thing to do was read romance books. And I sort of danced around the idea that I was going to give it a go writing a book, but I read this article about this tattoo artist who specialized in tattooing over scars, and it stuck with me all day. It was the why, what, when, how questions. I was like, why would he want to do it? Who would want tattoo? What kind of scars would you want tattooing over? Why would you want to tattoo over them? Why would it be important to this person? And so in my head, I was asking all these questions, and I could see this book start to take shape. I'm like, well, okay, he's got to be a tattoo artist. So who's she? Why does she want a scar tattooed over? Why would it matter to him to do it? Right. And then in my head, so I came up with the characters of Trent and Harper. And I was like, well, if I give her a brother and there's conflict, well, at some point he needs to come back. So, maybe there's got to be a book where he is a hero. And then I didn't just want to write. There was a lot of books at the time where it was all male crews, like it's either an all-male MC or an all-male tattoo studio or an all-male. And I just felt like I'd read a lot of all-male groups. And I've always thought that male and female friendships are just as important as, female friendships or, I felt like I wanted to see this expression of male and female friendships in books. And so I thought, well, if I had a tattoo studio and I put 4 people together, they could be tattoo artists. One could be tattoo studio manager. One could do piercings. Like, who are all these people? And so over the course of, I think we were there for like 4 days. Over the course of these days, my friend would catch me, I'm a big pen and paper girl. Like I try to go digital periodically, but I just love the feel of pen and paper. I just start scribbling notes down. Oh, that could happen. Or, oh, what about that? That could happen, and that could happen. And so by the time I got on the plane, I did have at least a easily explainable synopsis for all 4 books in the series.
Okay.
To sort of say, well, these are who these people are, and this is the story that comes behind it. And so when I got back, I then started thinking seriously about, well, okay, now you've got this idea. How are you going to learn how to write romance? Because I think that's a step. When people want to write romance, they miss that step. They go, I've got an idea for a book, and then they sit down and write it. And I sort of spent some time thinking about this, how do you learn how to write well?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think people too. I've been with people who first come into romance writing groups or writing groups in general, and they're like, "Oh, well, I write technical writing all day, so I know what I'm doing." I'm like, "Well, yes, you know the difference between there, and there, and past, present, and active and passive voices, the basics. But it is an art form to be able to pull that thread through an entire story to keep someone engaged. And so, so did you go to, did you look up local writers groups? How did you end up solving your problem of finding out?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I watched, lots of different authors have YouTube channels, and they, a lot of different authors offer courses and classes and things. I did a lot of reading personally. I got a lot of books. Larry Brooks' Story Engineering remains my favorite book in terms of framework of how to think about, plotting and pacing. I did a lot of work in how do you truly bring a character's characteristics to life without telling the audience this is what the character likes and does not like, or does and doesn't do, right? So, instead of saying this person's helpful, how do you, through the story, litter moments and interactions where you see that character being helpful? Those kinds of nuances. So, I kind of divided it up, plotting, pacing, characters, location, and I, read different books. Angela Ackerman's series, she has those books on the positive character traits, negative character traits, the emotional thesaurus. I kind of got my hand on some of those and read through those and kind of got ideas about how to think about characters. For me also, I was born in the north of England. And so I was born in a town that's sort of halfway between Liverpool and Manchester called Wigan. And, Wigan has a really broad northern twang to it. We're probably not known for our sentence structures. And so I almost had to learn how to properly write sentences. I would think nothing of saying, oh, I rushed to the door while tying my laces. Well, you can't be rushing and tying your lace at the same time, right? You're either bent over tying your lace or you're rushing to the door, but you can't be doing both. And, when I first started writing, that wouldn't occur to me. I'd write that down and I would think it was a perfectly fine sentence, and I had to realize that wasn't, proper grammar and English, to be honest. So like The Art of Styling Sentences is a book that I read, and I found that incredibly helpful to think about how to, just actually write in a really good way. And so I just spent a bunch of time doing that. And because I was senior vice president of strategy at my old retailer, my job was to look sort of 5 years into the future and see where the market was going, and then figure out how the business would need to adapt. And so I applied some of those techniques to figure out what to write in romance. So I went through, I pulled the top 100 books in romance, and I looked at their 5-star, 3-star, and 1-star reviews. And I identified what readers were loving, what readers were kind of about and what readers were completely out on. And, at the time when I was starting writing this book, at that point in time, because I know these things are trends and they change, but at that point in time, people were getting tired of cliffhangers, and people were a little bit tired of books that had started off as a 3-book series, but then it became a 5-book series, and then those books took too long to come out before the reader was, satisfied. And so I kind of applied that then to how I thought about writing the book. So I thought, well, definitely no cliffhangers. So I didn't want an ensemble cast that had unresolved stories at the end of each book. One of the things that I found was people getting frustrated. If a book is set in America, but you're Australian or English, sometimes we say sentences a little bit different. So, you might say, I'm going to the hospital, or as opposed to, I'm going to hospital. And so I thought, well, do you know what? If I'm going to do this, I need to hire an American editor to go through this and pick out when I might have been using an English-speaking English language phraseology as opposed to an American-speaking English phraseology in the way that you would say things. So I kind of, I found an editor who was willing to work with me and, help me figure some of these things out. So that's kind of the learning process I went through of, how do I learn the skills to do it? How do I make sure I understand what the market's really looking for before I even put pen to paper?
Well, and it's interesting you say that because, I remember, and it wasn't that long ago, you would wait for an author to write a book, and then they would, finally come out, and you would go get it at the store and read it, and then have to wait a year for the next book. And it didn't necessarily mean it was part of a series per se. It was just their next book. And and of course that was expanded when you have cliffhangers. But now readers are really, they're not good at waiting for that next book because of digital publishing and all sorts of things. And so you've got this, like you're saying, you have to balance of what you're trying to write with what you want your readers to stick around for. And it's important to know what you're able to write and how quickly does that feed the beast, as it were, to of the readers that you'd have, and do you have enough to keep them occupied in the meantime? It's a
great problem to have.
For sure.
Having an audience that is chomping at the bit and just waiting for that next book, it could be worse. Readers could have forgotten about you, and then, the next time you have a book out, it's crickets. So I'd rather have the voracious problem. And as a reader, I'm the same, right?
Yeah.
Like there are certain authors, Kylie Scott, Vi Keeland, Catherine Levesque, that are my personal favorite authors, and I just can't wait for their next book to come out. Like I'm stalking it. And, yesterday, 2 of my favorite authors, Kylie and Vi, both put out books on the same day, and I'm like, oh my God, which am I going to read first, right? And even though I have my own book out on Monday, I'm still like, oh my gosh, how quickly can I read one of them so I can get to the other one? But I don't want to rush the first one, so which do I read first? I will literally toss a coin to figure out which one I have to go through first. So as a reader, I get it, right? As a reader, I fully understand. And as an author, you've got to look at your calendar and go, oh, crikey, how quickly can I write this?
And sanity, because we're all balancing things outside that bubble of writing. I remember years ago, and you mentioned RWA because one of the most enjoyable things I when I'd go to the conference was running into the authors I so loved. And it was never in a weird way like I'm going to stalk this person. It did occasionally happen though. But I remember standing in the goodie room one time, and the goodie room is, for anyone listening, is people would go in and put like extra stuff. So authors would go in and put these little goodie bags, or publishers would put a bunch of books in there, and you could take home if you wanted to carry 10,000 pounds of books home, which many people did.
I routinely did that.
Routinely, yes. But I was standing there one day, and I look over, and Sabrina Jeffries is standing in the room, and I thought, oh, God, I've read every book she's put out, and I'm standing here thinking, this is my opportunity to go talk to her. And so I walked over and I said, I just wanted to let you know that every time one of your books comes out, my kids have sandwiches for dinner. And she thought that was really funny, and we had a very lovely conversation. She was very gracious. Well, then I think the next year it was in Atlanta. So we went to Anaheim and then Atlanta, and she had remembered me from the year before and said, oh, it's the sandwich lady. And then her agent's like, oh, it's the sandwich lady. And so then forever on, I was the sandwich lady. At any time I see her. I know, and it was funny because and since then I've seen her several times, and we've talked, and I've talked to her publicist and everything. And so it's one of those little things that you don't expect when you go to something like that. So when your authors become, writer friends and acquaintances, it's just kind of this really cool club, I guess, that, you've worked so hard just on your own stuff, and then it's all these perks that you see from that hard work. So it's a big deal. So I have a story. Yeah, please tell me.
Oh, I was going to say I have a story of a similar experience. So I'd done all this work on coming up with the idea for the Second Circle series, and I was, on the fence. Do I give this a go? I feel like I should because I've got this idea, but I didn't know whether I should or I shouldn't. And J.C. Burton's play-by-play series. Making my way through that series at the time when I'm having this dilemma. And I was like, you know what, this series is so good, and these families, and they're expanding, and it starts off with the two brothers and a sister, and then, by the time the series is, we're now at like second cousins and, other players on different teams or whatever. It's just kind of expanded outwards. But I was like, you know what, reading that series made me think this is it. I'm going to give it a go. I always say that Nora Roberts' Ardmore trilogy was the book that introduced me to romance, and J.C. Burton's play-by-play series was the romance that made me think I'm going to give this a go. And so the night before my book came out, and it came out at the start of July, I found J.C.'s email contact on her website, and I wrote her a letter and said, tomorrow I've got a series coming out. And I just want you to know that you reading your books gave me kind of the courage and confidence to give this a go, right? I read the play-by-play series, and I love Mick, and I love the characters, and so, your books are amazing, but just so you know, they don't sometimes just inspire us to read. Sometimes they inspire us to do other things. And JC was amazing. She was so gracious. She sent me a lovely email back, big pep talk, you can do this. And then the next day she shared my book, which just made me pass out. It was almost better than writing the book, was actually having JC share the book. And then she dropped me a line. She's like, hey, you going to RWA? And I said, yes. And she said, well, listen, why don't we meet and have a coffee? And so I that day I had saved, because I was also a Rita finalist, and I had I finaled for best debut and romantic suspense, and but outside of my Rita dress, I saved my best outfit, and I was like, this is it, I'm going to read J.C. Burton in my best outfit, and so I was at our suggested meeting spot like half an hour early because I didn't want to miss it and I didn't want to be late and all the rest of it, and I'm stood there and I see her walking towards me, and I'm like, be cool. It's just J.C. Burton walking towards you. Be cool. And then she gets within like 3 feet of me, and I'm like, oh my God, you're J.C. Burton. And I couldn't keep myself together, and that was it. And she was so lovely. And then so we sat for like, I don't know, an hour or something. And she gave me lots of great advice, and because my book had only been out a few weeks then, and so it's been really lovely that every RWA since that we've both been at, we've met up again. It's just been the most joyous thing.
Yeah, and I found that, and still find that, when you find those people that truly believe that you can do that, that sticks with you, and does help through those, really rough patches of writing or not writing, or even just a really bad day. Just like, I'm doing this because other people see and believe in it too, and so that's a huge deal. I love stories like that. when we're helping each other.
Well,
That's such a big deal.
I think when we were talking on Facebook, I shared with you that I've had this break because I've had some mental health issues with perimenopausal depression, and it was very bad. It was as bad as it can probably get, and so there was a period of time where I pretty much couldn't do anything, and so I obviously it's important to me to get back to romance. It's what I love. It's what I do. It's been my full-time job for years. And so I was really keen, and, I'm really hopeful that Love in Numbers does well enough that I can continue to do that. And I got a message out of the blue from Vi Keelan, and she had heard from somebody else what I had gone through, what I've been going through, because I've been quite public about it on social media, because I think there's a stigma still attached to these things, and I want people to know that they're not alone in these things. And she was amazing and said, it's horrible what we have to go through, but I'm here for you. What can I do to help? And so she was super gracious and has been helping me share my posts and offers to do giveaways together and stop by her group anytime. And she said, listen, I've got a few friends. Do you mind if I share your story with them? And I said, well, sure, because I'm sharing this on social media anyway. People can go and read about it if they want to, especially on my Instagram. And so she did. And then the next thing I know, Kristen Proby, Sawyer Bennett, Corinne Michaels, Carrie Ann Ryan, like a whole bunch of authors that are kind of in a realm that I'm not in yet, reached out and said the same thing and said, what can we do to help? And so to have this, I actually made a last minute addition to my acknowledgements to Vi, because I wanted her to know how much it meant to me that she'd done it. But I put to Vi for reminding me what it looks like when another woman helps you lift the weight of your own crown. And so sometimes I think those moments when we get support and encouragement and a cheer from people, it's more than just a pep talk. It's a, what I mean? It's a much more important thing. It's not even that it just helps us feel better about our day. It just, it goes a lot further than that.
I think, too, that a lot of times when it's a mental health issue, people aren't sure how to ask good questions. I mean, people ask questions, but I think a lot of times maybe they're not sure what questions or how to ask it. And I think that just something as simple as, what do you need? Because it's, and a lot of times people may not know at the time when you ask. And so I think that just keep checking back in with someone is huge, because and we've all done it when we've had, everyone has a bad day and someone comes back and says, oh, is your day better today? But when you have a lot of bad days, people aren't always as good about to keep checking back, because I guess part of it is the worry of, well, she's just going to be sad, so what would the conversation be if I check, But I think sometimes we just have to say, this person just needs maybe to just know that someone out here's thought of them today. That's huge. Yeah.
Well, and for me, it was, I went 6 months without diagnosis, and during those 6 months, I was convinced it was me. Now, it was me, but I was just convinced it was me. I got into a very strong negative thought problem about myself. You're procrastinating, you're being lazy. You've written 7 books in 18 months for St. Martin's Press. You can get your ass off your chair and you can finish this book. Real negative self-talk about myself, that I was just, I wasn't functioning because I was, just being lazy and couldn't pull my finger out and just needed to pull my socks up. And so during those 6 months, I also worked really hard to hide that from everybody else, because there's a feeling of shame and embarrassment that goes along with that you're like, I'm letting my family down. If I don't put books out, I don't make money. And I have a financial contribution I need to make to our family life. And so for 6 months, not only was I having those thoughts, but I wasn't sharing them with a single person because I felt too guilty and was too embarrassed. And it was my husband who eventually he dropped the children off at school in the morning. And I remember him leaving because we had one of those, oh, what have you got planned for today? And he's like, oh, I'm going to go and do this. And he was working from home that day for some reason. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I'll do this and whatever. And then I decided I was going to book this trip to London for some research I was doing. And all I had to do was book a train. I had to just figure out how I was going to get there. Did I go into Birmingham from Manchester and across into London, or did I go, straight down into London and then take the train slightly out to where I was trying to get to? And then the next thing I remember was my husband saying, what's for lunch? And I had a million tabs open, and I couldn't bring the trip to a decision. I couldn't decide what to do. I'd even got Google Maps open, looking at pictures of near where I was trying to get to, was there parking if I took my car? I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't bring it to any kind of conclusion. And you read my bio. I've traveled all over the world. I've worked all over the world. Like, this is,
right.
I'd like to think that if you said, hey, can you get to this place in, Kuala Lumpur by Tuesday? I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'm on it. But I couldn't book the train. And he just looked at me and he said, can you do me a favor? He's like, can you go talk to someone?
Yeah.
Because I think you really need to. And by the time I got to the doctor, I was in a really bad state. It had progressed. When you're looking at a bridge and thinking how quickly would you have to drive into it for it to, do what you're thinking about, then you're in a really bad place. And so,
sure.
Fortunately, the National Health Service is great. Nobody in England for sure needs to suffer with mental health issues with the resources that we have available on the NHS, which are free. I was quickly, obviously because of where I was at, I needed to have medication, which I fully endorse and would support anybody who needs it. Decide what works best for you, but there is absolutely no shame or stigma in admitting you need medication. In my case, I think it was quite literally a lifesaver. And then I just got the support that I needed to figure it out. That, I got cognitive behavioral therapy and therapists and the whole kit and caboodle to get myself back on my feet. And it's been a long journey, and I'm still working through anger about it. Like, I've always been a super high achiever. I've done all these high profile jobs. I loved writing. The fact that my career's had to step back because of this 2-year absence. I'm on release week, and my release week numbers don't look like they used to when I was on a roll and I had all these different books out.
Sure.
So do I still have some anger that I have to work through for that? Yeah, definitely. But am I healthy? Yes. And that is hands down the most important thing.
Yeah, and it's good that you have someone in your life who said, hey, please go do something and help yourself. I'm here. And that's huge, because there's a lot of people who don't, or like you're saying, get your act together. What's wrong with you type. And I think for some people, possibly a lot, that the idea of, just not being, fill in the blank adjective enough is a hard one to get through. So I'm very glad that you have that support. That's massive.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think as well, writing can be a very solitary occupation.
Yes.
And I think you spend a lot of time as a writer in your own head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, we do research, yes, we go to conferences, but you find yourself in your own head. And with all this profiles being put on social media right now about how addictive it is and how it's easy to kind of need that endorphin kick you get from the likes and the comments and all the rest of it. So, here we are at our desks in our own heads, surrounded by distraction, I think it's easy to lose track of what actually is a habit you've developed versus what is depression versus what's just blowing off steam because today's a rubbish day and it's just not going great. Like I certainly lost track of all of that. It all just blurred into one, and I didn't know whether it was a good day from a bad day. I couldn't tell anymore. But I think writing certainly puts us, I think it has certain characteristics to it that make it easy to I don't know whether easy is the right word, but, makes you susceptible to depression and anxiety.
Well, sure. And it's hard, too, because, and I think that because it's so easy to write something scathing down on in the cyberspace, so someone doesn't feel or put much thought into saying, oh, well, this book was terrible because, they misspelled a word on page 11, and so I gave it a 1. I mean, it's just like it's that kind of indifference to something that's just really minor. Like maybe they wouldn't have looked at that much at all had they not had that immediate outlet to write something like that. And it's like it's become easy to just kind of vomit out everything you're thinking, whether it's a good thing to put out or a bad thing. And so it can be a great thing, like you're saying, like you've written about it, you've been open about the struggle you've gone through, and who knows how many countless people you've helped doing this. And then the people that have reached out to you and they've helped. Of course, I'm sure that there will be people, if they haven't already, who have made commentary of, well, you just need to fill in the blank, of advice. And that's, again, is it helpful? Probably not. So but for you to say, you know what, this is something I have to say, that's massively strong. And so I am so grateful for you willing to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. The biggest reward for it, to be honest, has been the letters I've had. I've had a lot of response to it, which has been, is great because it shows that people do want to talk about it. But I know there are 7 women who have sought and received treatment at the kind of level that I needed because of this. And so, over it was a 2-year battle for me, but it was 18 months of diagnosis and medication and so on and so forth. But over that time, I know of at least 7 women who required the same level of treatment that I did, but only broke that cycle of what I was going through in the first 6 months. There's just me. I'm being lazy. I can't do this. I'm procrastinating. And therefore, because I'm procrastinating, I feel useless and worthless and so on. 7 of them were able to break that cycle. So for me, talking about it publicly, people are like, you sure that's what you want to do? Because, who knows what would have happened to those 7. And then they've gone on and told other people too about it. So, that's a good thing. It's a self-fulfilling, positive prophecy. And I just think we need to look after each other, right? And we do that by talking to each other and sharing our experiences so that we don't feel alone when we're having them.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you don't really realize how books, that escapism, helps someone else on different levels. So, yes, you've written these books, but then someone will come up and say, oh, this is, because the cover's very sexy of your latest book. But
it's a good cover, isn't it?
It's a really good, it's that smooth like that gin. But it's one of those things that people will read the book and then say, oh, I want to know more about you if they don't know. And then they go, oh, wait, hold on. She's like a real person. And she's had this, and I know someone. It's just like it's that process of going through, or even I wonder if that's what's going on with so-and-so or me, or maybe I should watch for that when I'm that age. I mean, there's all these things that it just kind of keeps fueling each other and helping each other. So it is a big deal that you've got that out there. So with all that said, and you've now written this book, have you already written book 2 and 3, or are those plotted, or how is that going?
So book 2 is about 75% written.
Okay.
And it picks up with Olivia, the youngest sister, and the book picks up at the point where the first book ends.
Okay.
And so that's going to come out in February. And
okay.
I've also the Second Circle series and the Preload series have a really devoted following. And I'm incredibly blessed by that. But there are people who, certainly Lennon in the Preload series, Lennon Reborn. I did something so horrible to Lennon in that story. And so I made the hashtag I Survived Chapter 3 for that book. And, there was a wonderful lady called Lynn who came up to me at one of my signings, and she'd actually had a T-shirt made with the band names on the back, and I Survived Chapter 3 on the front. And so people, and certainly with the Preload boys, I didn't really want to stop writing them. I finished their stories, and they're perfect, like HEAs, right? I mean, they're exactly where you want them to be at the end of a romance. You feel good about them. I just didn't want to let them go yet. Like I still don't feel ready to let them go. So I have a secret. Well, it's not really a secret. I was telling everybody I wasn't writing it, but I was writing it really. I've done a Christmas crossover novella between the two series, which it's the wedding of one of the couples at Christmas.
Okay.
And everybody gets together because the Preload series is a spin-off of the Second Circle series. So the characters all know each other, and so they all get together. But obviously I've written it real time, so it's 2020 when they get together. So these characters have got, bearing in mind The Strongest Steel came out in 2015, 5 years of time has gone by for some of these books. And so I've been able to build a continuation of their lives, and whether they have children, did they get married, what are they doing, did they pursue those dreams that they said they were going to set out to pursue, wherever I left them in their books. So it was good to go back and figure out where I'd left all of these characters at in their lives. And and because I'm a geek, I did all of this on Aeon Timeline. Like, I don't know if you use Aeon. It's a project management software, but it's amazing for keeping track of ages of people, and when things happen, so you can say, oh, when this incident happened, and you go back and you're like, oh, exactly 2 years ago.
Wow.
So I
that sounds like a perfect story Bible program.
Yeah. Oh, it totally is. And so I was like, right, this is how I'm going to pick them all back up. So I've got that coming out closer to Christmas. But then I've got book 2 in February, and then book 3 in June.
Wow. Okay. So that is so cool. And you've got all this coming out. And then what is the novella coming out, the title for the holidays?
I don't know yet.
Okay. So people just have to keep checking back.
So for the longest time, like I say, I kept saying in my social media, if I was to write a Christmas novella, I'd have to figure out, how old Petal was, or if I was to write a Christmas novella, maybe I'd have to go and do this. And so it's just been referred to as the Christmas novella this entire time. Okay. And so my Second Circle series are all the something. So The Strongest Steel, The Fractured Heart, The Purest Hook, The Darkest Link. So it's got to go with that. But I've kind of got, I don't know, I'm like The Christmas Wish, I don't know, The Deepest Love. It's going, so I've got a list. I've just not picked it yet, and I will literally, when my friend Tanya doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to ask her to make me the cover, I'll pick one on that day.
Okay.
And then that'll be it.
That'll be it. And so if you want to find out what the title will be, you're going to have to keep checking into her website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Absolutely. And all of those links are in the write-up of the show. So thank you so much for talking. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
You're more than welcome. It's been a pleasure anytime.
Oh, good. And so please come back and let's talk about your next couple of books when they hit.
I would love to do that. Thanks so much for inviting me today, Patricia.
Absolutely. And this has been Patricia W. Fisher with Readers Entertainment Radio. And please make sure that you take good care of yourselves, get a good book, and then always reach out if you feel like you need help. Keep on reading, everybody.
This show brought to you by Circle of Seven Productions, www.cosproductions.com. Please be sure to subscribe and welcome to our circle.